I'm going to be reading first chapters of books to give you some recommendations. So today I'm going to be reading the first chapter of Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere by Julie T. Lamana. This book covers a girl named Armani who is about to turn 10 years old in 2005 in New Orleans, right when Hurricane Katrina is about to hit. So throughout the book, we learn a little bit about the destruction and the impact it has on families. But I'm going to read you the first chapter just so you can kind of get an idea of how the book begins. So this is the first chapter of Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere. Chapter 1. Friday, August 26th, 2005, 3:17 p.m. I was on my tippy toes, bouncing up and down on the first step of the bus, stuck behind my second cousin, Denisha, and her melon-sized butt. My little sister, Celie, was up there sobbing, but there wasn't a dang thing I could do about it, because I was all squished between the biggest fifth grader and the lower ninth ward, and a clump of sweaty kids all but killing each other behind me. Denisha hit me square in the chest with a booty bump and glared over her shoulder. "Girl, you best stop pushing me." Her bottom lip was rolled out so far I couldn't help that my eyes went straight to the shiny, bubblegum pink underside. Hey, now, you girls stop all that messing around," my bus driver mumbled all slow in his old man voice. Mr. Frank had drove my daddy to school when he was a kid, using the same old bus, except it was new and shiny back then, not all beat down and rusted out like it was for us. Daddy said he guessed Mr. Frank had to be close to 120 years old. "Sorry, Mr. Frank," I said to Denisha's giant backside. The girl was standing on the step in front of me, so all I could see was how her khaki school pants were stretched so tight it was only a matter of time before they bust open at the seam right in my face. My nerves had worn down about as thin as the pants on my oversized cousin. Celie's crying had turned to blubbering. I was flat out done waiting. I tried to push my way into the aisle so I could at least see her. "Armani, what is your problem?" Denisha swung around and stomped her foot. She was at least 6 inches taller than me, and everything about her was big, even her head. When she looked down at me with her fat lips flapping and her head rolling from side to side, I knew she could kill me if she set her mind to it. But I didn't care. Celie was crying. "Shut up, Denisha, and get out the way." I slipped past her before she had a chance to say anything else stupid. I knew where Celie would be sitting because we always sat in the same seat, right up front. I didn't like sitting in the back of the bus. It seemed to me the further back you went, the crazier the kids were. Denisha shoulder bumped me when she passed me up, heading in her seat, in the back where she always sat. Sure enough, Celie was doing the ugly cry. Her face was all puffed up, her eyes were pouring water, and her arms were folded up tight across her chest. "What's going on? Why are you crying?" I asked, all out of breath. Celie looked up at me with her head hiccuping up and down. She ran the back of her hand under her nose, smearing all that wetness across her face. "Bugger took my book," she sobbed. I ain't never seen no one look so pitiful. "He took your book? That's why you're fussing?" Celie nodded about 50 times. I hated seeing her not smiling, but I couldn't believe all this drama was on account of a dumb book. I looked around for Bugger. I don't know what his mama named him, but ever since that kid was born 5 years ago, he's been Bugger. Simple as that. I don't even think he knew his real name. Then I seen him. He was standing on the very last seat in the back of the bus, jumping up and down like a fool, waving my sister's book in the air, just as proud as he could be. I marched toward the back to pry it out of his grimy hands. Stupid Bugger seen me coming, and he squealed like a stuck hog. He threw the book. It almost went flying out an open window. I kept heading straight for Bugger, never minding the book. At this point, I just wanted to knock that boy upside his head, but I never got the chance. Denisha stepped in my way with both hands on her wide hips and her big head cocked to the side. "Where you going, Armani?" "To kill your little brother," I wanted to say, but my good sense kept the words from leaving my mouth. "Nowhere," I lied. Some little kid leaned over the seat next to us and handed Denisha my sister's book. As soon as I saw the swirly green and white cover, my hands squeezed shut. Celia's journal. No wonder the girl was having such a fit. Denisha started flipping through the pages. She opened her mouth to say something, but just then the oldest Bowman kid reached in front of her and snatched the book out of her hands. "Boy, you're crazy," she squawked. The shaggy, blonde-headed Bowman kid never even looked at my cousin or said a word. He just held the book out for me to take. I grabbed the journal from the boy's smelly hand and whipped around. "You best tell your brother to leave Celie alone," I hollered over my shoulder at Denisha. My heart was about to jump out of my chest. I rubbed the book on the seat of my pants, hoping to wipe off any germs that might have been picked up, passed around like gossip on a crazy side of the bus. I walked fast back to my seat. "Whatever," Denisha hollered back. "You need to tell your little sister to stop being so trifling and weird." She started laughing, and lots of the other kids laughed with her, slapping high fives behind me, but I didn't care. "Whatever," I grumbled to myself. I tossed the journal onto Celie's lap. She went to hugging that book and looking up at me. The tears left in her eyes looked like specks of twinkles dancing around. "Oh, thank you, Armani, thank you." "Just put it away," I said. Don't be taking that thing out on the bus no more. Why can't you just keep it at home anyway? Because I never know when I might need it, silly. She was back to being her normal, strange self. I stood there, watching her put the book into a small book sack. Not her regular book sack for carrying school stuff. This was her other book sack, the one she used for carrying her special books or whatever else she had stashed down in there. After she zipped it up, she went to hugging the dumb sack. Denisha was right. My sister was weird. Move over, girl. Let me sit next to the window. After I sat down, Celie laid her head on my shoulder and sighed. I love you, Armani. I wiggled my shoulder to get her off me. I looked at her with my lip curled up, praying that nobody else had heard her. Shut up, Celie. Then, while I was staring out the window, I reached over and gave her hand a little squeeze. Old Mr. Frank always had his soul music pumping out of the homemade speakers he'd rigged up with fishing line. They hung crooked over the huge mirror he used for spying on us kids while he drove. Most times, I could barely hear the music on account of the kids hooting and hollering about a whole lot of nothing, everybody talking at the same time. Some days, it got so bad that by the time we finally made it to our stop, I used up all the nerves I'd been given to help me make it through the day. The noise wasn't the biggest problem, though. Nope, it wasn't the ride, the noise, or even the tore-up seats and sticky floors that had pulled the nice out of me. I didn't even care that they had us stuffed 3 or 4 kids to a seat. What did bother me was the smell. The smell wasn't so bad in the morning, but by afternoon, the August sun had been beating down all day, cooking up the smells. By the time school let out and we loaded onto the bus, it was like stepping into a big stinky sock. It didn't help matters none when all the sweaty kids piled into the bus and started spreading their smells around, especially the older ones coming straight from PE, and them white Bowman kids. There were 4 of them in that family, and they always walked together, sat together. Every day when they got on the bus, I'd keep all my fingers crossed that they wouldn't sit nowhere close to me. I ain't trying to be hurtful, but them kids smelled like their mama was bathing them in pure onion water. I don't know how anyone can smell that bad and not be bothered by their own stink. If they sat even kind of close to me, I'd bury my nose up in my own armpit and suck in the scent of the lavender soap Mama made us bathe in twice a day. I was always grateful when they walked on by and headed to the back of the bus. I only had to hide my nose for a quick minute. When Mr. Frank made his first stop, about 12 kids got off. That's when the rest of us shuffled around, jumping into open seats so he wasn't all squished up. While the bus sputtered and bounced down the road, I looked out the window and counted things. Mostly, I took to counting to keep my mind from noticing the canal. I hated the canal. I hated it because Mama hated it, and she hated it because Meemaw hated it. Somewhere in that stinking canal was the bones of my 2 dead uncles, Mama's brothers, Meemaw's sons. Story goes that one day when they were kids, one of them tried to save the other one from drowning when the canal decided to take them both. My bus went by that liquid graveyard every day, so I took to counting. Once, I tried counting folks sitting or standing out front of houses, but I lost track and had to start over 2 times. Meemaw said most of them were loafers, and they needed to get off their rear ends and make themselves useful. That's when Daddy reminded her that we needed to mind our own business and leave the loafers to their loafing. The week I started the 4th grade, I took to counting all the pink houses. Light pink, dark pink, didn't make no difference so long as there was some kind of pink into its color. I went on and counted it. I'd counted 9 pink-colored houses when we turned the last corner before the stop where we got left off. I was used to seeing window fans shoved up in windows. Anybody with good sense had one. We had 3 real nice ones ourselves. Well, except for the one in Meemaw's room that made a chirping bird sound every time she turned it on. But I was not expecting to see the new, clunky metal box sticking out of the side window of Denisha's mama's boyfriend's house. She's seen it too, and went to hollering and singing in the aisle, "We got us some air, we got us some air," the whole time swinging her big butt doing some kind of happy dance. All week long, she kept saying stupid things like, "Well, I guess I best be getting back to my air conditioning," or "It's so hot, y'all want to come sit a while in my air conditioning?" Stuck-up Denisha and her lame air conditioner got on my last nerve. After letting out kids here and there across the lower 9th Ward, Mr. Frank led us off in front of the tire shop where my Uncle T-Bone worked part-time. From there, it was just a short walk to get home. 8 kids got off at our stop. The Bowman kids, Denisha and Bugger, and me and Celie. Denisha and Bugger got off because their mama's boyfriend, Mr. Charlie, worked at the shop too. I don't know why they liked going in that nasty place. It reeked of gasoline, motor oil, cigarettes, and rotten old men. The only good thing about that shop was Mr. Jasper Jr. Sr. and the sound of his saxophone pouring out into the air. We could hear the sweet sound of his horn playing clear down by our house every day of the week except Sunday, when the shop was closed up and Mr. Jr. Sr. was at church, making his music for Jesus instead of for the rest of us. "Y'all have a good weekend," Mr. Frank said, and pulled the bus door open. "Don't forget to watch the 5 o'clock news now." Celie was on the step in front of me. She stopped so fast I almost plowed right into the back of her. "Why do we need to watch the news, Mr. Frank?" Took a second to chew on the toothpick sitting between the couple of teeth he had, then pulled the dirty ball cap off and rubbed his bald head. Staring out the bus windshield, he said, "There's a storm brewing. A big one, out there in the Gulf. He let out a whoosh of stale old man air. Reminds me of Betsy. Who's Betsy? I asked. Mr. Frank put his cap back on his head and looked me in the eye. He plucked the toothpick from his mouth. He squinted up his already wrinkly eyes and said, all serious, Betsy was the storm that sucked the life out of me. She took away everyone I ever loved. Celie gasped. That's so terrible, Mr. Frank. Yes, it is, child, he sighed. All right, then. And just like that, he turned and looked straight out of the bug-spattered windshield. Y'all have a good weekend. Tell your daddy and them I say hey. I got a whiff of something that smelled ripe as rotten gumbo, and I knew right off them Bowman kids had to be coming up behind me. Scared that the smell was contagious and could possibly stick on my clothes and skin forever, I gave Celie a nudge. Once we were off the bus, Denisha and Bugger went into the tire shop, the oniony Bowman kids took off running to Lord knows where, and me and my sister crossed over the road to walk home. Celie pulled out one of her books and started reading. How can you read and walk at the same time? She shrugged, never taking her eyes off her book. I guess it's because my feet know the way home. Yeah, but ain't you worried about tripping or something? I almost wish she would, just to prove my point. She stopped and looked at me over the top of her book. She rolled her eyes real big and took a slow, deep breath. I can walk and read at the same time, but I sure can't talk and read at the same time. For a split second, she reminded me of Mama, with that soft, sweet, I feel sorry for you face, 'cause you're so cute and young and ain't smart enough to know yet, look. She gave me a little sympathy smile and went to reading and walking again. I was left there, just staring after her with my mouth hanging open. While Celie walked on ahead of me, I let my eyes wander up to the sunshiny sky. I couldn't help but notice there wasn't one tiny cloud up there. Mr. Frank was a nice man and all, but I got to thinking that he must be getting really old, maybe even too old to drive a bus. There wasn't no storm coming, and even I could tell that. It was a perfect day. It was Friday, and it was my birthday weekend. I smiled to myself and hollered, Wait up, Celie. So that is the end of chapter 1 of Upside Down in the Middle of the Nowhere. We got a lot of exposition, so we learned about a lot of characters. There's a lot of foreshadowing coming about the storm. So if you're interested in this book, it's in my library in the realistic fiction section. It's also in our library as well. Happy reading.